Now today we are going to start with views. Okay. Okay. So talking about views, the concept of views in AngularJS is something like you want to create a web application which is a single page application. Okay. So all the functionalities are provided on a single page. But at the same time, you want to navigate to different pages of your application. I mean, you want to navigate to different uh, web pages that are included in your web application, but all the pages, whichever you want to navigate, must be shown on a single page. Okay, so that is possible by creating a view for that particular page which you want to see on that single page. Understood? So that is the concept of views. Now, definitely, if we are using the concept of views to create any single page application, then there will be no page reloading. There won't be any page reloading. Simply, whatever page you are trying to access, that page content will be displayed on the current page. Understood? Fine. Now, how does AngularJS provide this? It provides the concept of views, or it supports the concept of views with the help of ng root module. Okay, so we'll see how we can create views. So in order to create views, we have two directives and one service provided by AngularJS. Two directives are ng view and ng template, and the service provided is, I mean, root provider is the service which we can use. Generally, it is used to map which view should be attached with which controller. So we'll see an example regarding that, and uh, we'll see the demo. Okay, firstly, let us understand each of these components, the ng view, ng template, and the root provider service. So as I told, whenever we use ng view, we are creating some space, or we are creating room for the page to get loaded, or the content of the page to get loaded. So as I told, there will be a single page, but if we try to access some another page, the content of that other page will get loaded on the current page. Now where it should get loaded, so we have to reserve some space on the current page. Okay, so as you can see, we are creating a division generally for viewing or for showing any view. We create a division, and for that division tag, we use attribute ng view. We use the directive ng view. Understood? So what we are creating, as you can see, we are simply creating a placeholder. We are simply creating some area on the current page where the corresponding view can be placed, where the content of the demanded page can be placed. Okay. Then with the ng template directive, we are going to actually create the HTML view, or we are going to create the actual HTML page that we want to display. Understood? So that will be done with the help of script tag. Okay, and that script tag along with the ng template, it will also have one attribute called as ID. Okay, now why this ID is used? It is helpful for the root provider service. With the help of the ID, the root provider service will be able to correlate any view with its corresponding controller. Okay, for now, you consider view as a HTML page, or you consider it as a HTML resource, let us say. Okay, and that resource definitely will have some controller, right? So it is the root provider service performs mapping of the HTML resource and its corresponding controller. So on what basis that mapping will be done? The mapping will be done on the basis of this ID attribute. Okay. And as I told, lastly, root provider is a service provided by AngularJS. Basically, we use it for mapping HTML page or the template that we created using ng template directive and attach a controller to the same. Okay. So here's an example with which you will be able to understand. Firstly, we have tried to load the Angular framework as we do it usually by mentioning the script tag. But additional Angular module that we have loaded over here is the Angular root module, because we are trying to create views. So we require the root module of the AngularJS, right? So in the same way, we are also going to load the Angular root module. Fine. So that we do in the script tag as usual. And then here you can see we are creating the AngularJS application by mentioning the ng app directive. Okay, and we are naming that application as main app. Fine. Now you can imagine that we are creating a module. We are creating a Angular application module over here, and in that module we are having two hyperlinks. So we have taken two anchor tags, and one view we can say is for, or one page is for adding the students, and the other page or the other view is to view the students or to display the enrolled students. Okay, that is the concept. So when I click this hyperlink, the add student page should get loaded. And when I click the second hyperlink, the view student page should get loaded on the same page, not by reloading any other page. Okay. Okay, fine. After that, after I have created the hyperlinks to navigate, I will create some space where the view will get loaded. So either of these two views, whichever hyperlink I click, the corresponding view will be loaded in this division. Okay, that is why I have created a division with the ng view directive. Okay, now as I told, after we have created the space for loading the new view, we need to create the views at actual. I mean, the target pages, right? We need to create them. And that we have to do with the help of ng template directive. So remember, when we write the script tag, the type uh, is now text slash ng template. So this acts as a script template. Okay. And we are providing a ID for this particular template as add. Similarly, the other view that we are creating, the ID for that view is view itself. Okay, because it is related to viewing the students. Okay. Then basically we are designing a page in the script tag. So in that page or in that view, we are having a header tag like add student. Here it is view student, and then we have a expression in which a message will be printed. So this message variable will be replaced with some value which we are providing from the controller of this view. Okay, similarly, this message will be replaced by some text which we are providing from the controller of the second view. Understood? So this is how we are creating two templates for the two views that we want to show on the same page. Clear? Okay. Moving ahead. Here we are actually uh, creating the application module, or we can say we are referring to the created module. So with the angular.module function, we provide the name of the module whose reference we want, and we'll get the reference in this variable main app, for example. But if you remember, yesterday I told that if there is any dependency uh, on any module, then name of those modules are provided in square brackets as an array, right? So here this main app module requires ng-root module because we want to create views, right? So this is an inbuilt module which we are using as a dependency. Okay, so a reference for the main app uh, application module will get in this variable main app, and then we want to configure that application module. Okay, now what we mean by configuring is we want to provide uh, we want to provide some mechanism with which we can load the respective view. Okay, and that mechanism is provided by root provider service. Okay, so uh, we'll be we'll be using this service, and for the function, for the config function, we have other argument as the function which should get executed when when the module application module gets loaded. Okay, so we want that function to get executed, and what is that function? We are going to uh, navigate to the add one page. So we are providing the URL when the template URL is add. I mean the ID uh, which we have selected is add. Okay, and the controller is add C. Similarly, if we have selected the URL view1, right, then the ID is view and the controller from where the data will come is view C. Okay, so that we do in the config function. Now this is how we have established our application module. Now let us come to the second type of a module, that is the controller module. Okay, now for the main app application module, we are defining a controller, right? And the name of the controller is addc. So there are two controllers basically for this main app. One is addc and the other one is viewc. Okay, so in the first controller addc, what exactly we are doing? We are trying to initialize some uh, application variable called as message. Okay, here you saw this message is application variable of this main app, and value for that variable is being provided over here through the controller. Okay, so what the value will be? This page will be used to display add data form. Some add data form will be displayed. Okay, so we are going to display this message over here whenever the first hyperlink will be clicked. Secondly, for the same application module, we are defining another controller with a name VUC, and if that is invoked, then the message will be initialized with this text. That is, this page is used to display the view students form. Understood? So either of the two messages will be initialized and will be displayed as a part of this expression. Okay, so as an output, you can see over here, firstly, the page will have two hyperlinks, and below those two hyperlinks, either of the two views will be displayed depending upon which hyperlink I press. So either the page will be like this or the page will look like this. Understood? So simple concept of views. Whenever we want whenever we want to avoid page reloading, at that time we can use the concept of views. Understood? So this is the division. Here you can see this is the division in which we have loaded the view. Okay, here this is the division. Fine. So that was views. Okay, let us move ahead for scope. So we have seen this scope JavaScript object earlier also when we saw controllers. Generally, we will use this scope object, JavaScript object, whenever we are mapping any controller with the views. Okay, like joining the controller with the views. We saw the example just now. Okay. So what the scope object contains, it contains model data, or in simple words, we will call it as the application data. Like the application data in the last example was the message variable, right? So that is carried in the scope object. And any controller that we are using will be able to access the uh, model data through the scope object. So here below also we can see an example. We have a controller which is defined for the main app application module, and name of the controller is obviously shape controller, for example, and we are accessing a message data and type data using the scope object. Okay. So these two, message and type, are the variables. We can call them in simple words. Message and type are the variables belonging to which module? The main app module, whose controller we are defining. Okay, fine. But as you can see here, it is mentioned that instead of having just variables, we can also define functions with the help of the scope object. So any function definition, suppose main app module is having any function and we want to invoke that function, or we want to define that function, then that can be done with the help of scope object here itself in the controller. Okay, not only the messages, I mean, not only the variables can be initialized, but even the functions can be defined using the scope object. Fine. Then coming to the services. So a service basically will identify service as a function for now. So n number of services are provided by AngularJS, and all of the inbuilt services are prefixed by a dollar sign. Okay, so you can see here HTTPS is a service which we generally use to make AJAX calls from the Angular script. Then we have the root service which we use to define some routing information. We have the window service, we have the location service which we generally use for referring to the URL. Okay, so these are the uh, services, and as you can see, each service will be responsible for a specific task. Okay, so here we have an example of using the location service. Okay, so what we are trying to do, we want to know the URL of the current page through the Angular JS. So we are creating a Angular JS application by using again the ng app directive, and we are defining a controller for it as my control, right? So in this, we are having the header tag in which we will display the my URL variable or model data, we call it as. Fine. Now where the value for this variable will come, it will come obviously from the controller that we have defined in the script tag. Okay, so we got the reference to the my app application module in the app variable, and with the app variable we are defining the controller. Okay, now what is that controller? uh, Generally controllers were having only one argument, that is the scope object, but now you can see there is another location object also, or location service we can call it. Okay, so now what we can do is we are defining the my URL model data or the variable with the URL of URL of the current HTML page. Understood? In whatever this page is, that URL of that page will be assigned to my URL variable using the scope object, and that will get displayed as a part of this h3 tag, content of the h3 tag. Okay, so we'll execute this and see the demo once. Yeah, so as I told, with this absolute URL, we'll get the URL of the current page, and obviously we are accessing it with the location object or with the help of location service. Okay, so yeah, you can see, yeah, the URL is of this ASP page, tryit.asp, and if we had passed any file name, because this entire code is passed as a file, so the name of the file is so and so. Understood? So the entire absolute URL you can see. Fine. You can verify it. The same URL is available over here also. Fine. Okay. So that is a small example related to services of AngularJS. Moving ahead to see the dependency injection. Now, what is dependency injection? Generally, this term of dependency injection is used whenever we are defining ready-made components, so that those components can be used by any other component which requires it. Okay, so basically you can imagine it as a module uh, or a component which we are creating, which we have created already, and we are allowing that component to be used by some another module. Okay, that is called as dependency injection. Okay, fine. So uh, what the main purpose is for providing the facility of dependency injection, we are simply allowing the components to be reusable, at the same time maintainable easily. Changes made at once will be reflected to all the modules wherever it is being used as a dependency, and also it allows some systematic testability also. Fine. So like AngularJS will also provide some dependency injection, and it provides creating these components in four. Yeah, if we want any component to be reusable, then we will have to create that component as a part of any of these five core components. Okay, so first of the five components is the value component. Now, if you want to inject any value as a dependency into the module, then how to do it, right? So value is a function basically, which we use with AngularJS. And if we want to pass any values uh, to the controller when we are configuring the controller. At that time, we can use the value function, as you can see. So here we have defined the module with the help of angular.module function as usual. And then we are trying to create a value object. With the help of the value function, we are trying to create a value object which will be injected as a dependency. Okay. So the name of that object is default input, and the value that we are passing, or the data that we are passing for this default input, is 5. Okay, so this is how we are creating a value object. Now, wherever this value object is to be injected as dependency, for example, in this controller, this value default input value object is required, then you can see in the function where we pass the scope object as the single parameter. Along with that, we will also pass the dependency. Whatever dependency it required, this controller required, we are passing that dependency over here. Okay. So remember, we are creating the value object with the help of value function, and we are providing the name of that value object as an argument to the controller function. Okay, and then why we are passing it? Definitely it must be required in that function. And why we are using this? We are simply using this default input to initialize some number variable present in the main app application module. Okay, so we are accessing it and we are initializing it over here. Simple. So that was the first component, that is the value component, which can be injected as a dependency. Secondly, all of them are given here, simple ones. Factory, you can imagine it as a function only. Okay, but the task of that function is to only return some value. Okay, so factory is a function which is only used for returning some value. Okay, now wherever that value is required, whenever that value is required, so any service or controller can use that factory function and get that value in return. Okay, so that is the use of any factory function. Like we have the getter methods. Similarly, you can imagine the getter methods are nothing but factory functions. Okay. Then what we identify as a service component, a service can be injected as a dependency when it is having a set of functions. So factory is a single function, whereas service is a set of functions. Okay, so whenever these set of functions are required, I will be injecting the dependency as a service. Understood? Like we required the uh, when we saw the views, we required the root dependency, right? So those come with a set of functions which are required for creating views. Okay. Similarly, the provider component is used for creating services, and factory uh, when we are configuring the controller. At that time, internally we are able to create the services and factory with the help of provider. And lastly, like we saw the value, which was we can change the value here. Similar to the value is the constant component, but the value can be passed only once when we are in the when we are using the config function for the controller. Okay, at that time only the value can be set for a constant. Okay, so these were the 5 types of dependencies that we can inject into any AngularJS application component. Fine. Okay. Then custom directives. Now we saw that whichever inbuilt directives are provided by AngularJS. But suppose I require my own directive. So in that case, I can extend the functionality of my HTML page by using some custom directives. Okay. Now, how we can create or how we can define these custom directives? So we are using the directive function to define the custom directives, and uh, wherever this uh, wherever this custom directive is found, maybe in terms of element, maybe in terms of attribute, so that particular tag or that particular element is replaced by the code of the custom directive. Okay, we'll see an example, and you'll be able to understand through that. So just remember, wherever the custom directive matches in the HTML page, may it be in terms of a tag name, may it be in terms of an attribute of any tag. So that tag itself will be replaced by the code of the custom directive. Okay. So types of elements or types of replacements, we'll call it as, for the custom directives can be in terms of tags or element directives. So whenever the custom directive is activated, uh, at that time it is matching the name of the tag or name of the element. Okay. Then attribute, whenever the custom directive matches with the attribute name, at that time uh, the attribute itself or the tag for that attribute is replaced by the custom directive code. Similarly, some CSS style can be matched or a comment can be matched. Okay. So see this example. Okay, we are having a custom HTML tag like student, and this student tag is having attribute name. Okay. So, and we have closed the student tag, and again we have defined the student. So these are the custom HTML tags. Fine. For defining custom directive for this custom HTML tags, we will use the directive function as I told in this slide. In order to create custom directives, we will have to use the we'll have to use the directive function and then mention the name of the either the name of the attribute or the name of the tag, depending upon what type we are addressing. Either it will be a element, that means name of the tag, or it will be an attribute with which we want to replace. It will be a CSS style or a comment, whatever we want, we can provide over here. And then in the function, we will provide some code that should replace that particular tag. For example, here I have provided student. So wherever the student tag will be present in the HTML page, all of those student tags will be replaced by some HTML code. And where that code is written, it will be written as a part of this function body. Understood? So that is called as uh, creating custom directives. So here we have an example. What we are doing here, we have created a Angular application by using ng app. Name of the application is my app, right? And here we are having custom HTML tags like stud, right? So here stud is the tag name or the element name. Over here, stud is being used as a attribute. Okay, so no matter where it is encountered, wherever stud is encountered, those tags will be replaced by the custom directive code. Understood? So now in the script, what we are doing, we are using the directive function and providing the name of the tag or name of the attribute, whatever we want. And then we want some function to get executed. So what that function will do in the return object, what we are defining what which HTML code should get executed. E stands for element. So if there is a stud element, then that will get replaced with this template. If there is a if I say A over here, then only if stud is being used as attribute, then only those tags will be replaced by this template. Understood? Now here I have defined both E and A. That means all the elements and also wherever stud is used as a attribute, all those tags will be replaced by the template HTML code. Understood? So that is the use of custom tags. Okay. Fine. So we'll see the result of. So you can see stud, whatever pattern I have mentioned over here, or the name of the directive. If I find any element, that means if I find any tag name, then that tag name will get replaced by this made by a directive. Also, if it is found as an attribute, even that entire tag will get replaced by the same text. Okay, so here you can see, yeah, twice this message or this header one text is getting printed. That means first it was substituted for this stud tag, and second time it was substituted for this div tag where stud was used as a attribute, simply because I'm using E and A both. If I am only using E, that means it will only seek a match for the elements, that means tags. So it will display it only once. Okay, for this stud tag it displayed. Fine. Okay, that was custom directives. Let us see the last point in AngularJS part, that is internationalization. Now, what is this internationalization? We are simply uh, for for any software application, we are automatically adapting that software application to the regional or language restrictions. Okay, regional restrictions or language related restrictions. Okay. Now, for example, if we want to represent currency related information. So if the page is being or the software application is being viewed in India, then that currency should be prefixed with some rupees symbol, right? If the same page is being viewed in US, then that much currency should be prefixed with the dollar symbol, right? So those sort of customizations will be provided with the help of internationalization concept. Okay. So in AngularJS, three types of filters are provided to support internationalization, right? And which are those three? Currency related information, date related information, and number related information. Okay. So how do we include this internationalization? We will simply have to uh, put a AngularJS file like we did earlier in the script tag. But now that AngularJS file is according to the local of the country. So for example, here example is given for Danish local. I will have to include which Angular file, angular hyphen local underscore da hyphen dk.js. So this is the Angular module which is basically created for the for Danish language. Understood? So that is the case. So if your application is including the specific Angular module or Angular framework module, then it supports that particular region. Okay. For example, or by default, if you are not including any specific Angular module, if you are loading the basic Angular module, then depending upon your browser's local, it will handle such type of filters. Okay, so here is an example. What we are doing here, we have created an application, and in that application there is a fees uh, type of variable, and we are pipelining it with the currency filter. Okay, and there is a admission date variable, and we are pipelining it with the date format. Understood? Now here uh, you can see we have included the normal Angular module, Angular framework with no specific name of local. So wherever the browser is being used, depending upon the region, this currency and date format will be used. Okay, so here in the function part of the controller, you can see fees is being initialized with 100 and admission date is initialized with the current date. Okay, using the date class object of the date class. So when we run it, you'll see, uh, suppose that page was loaded in America, for example. So dollar is prefixed for the value, for the fees value, and the date is displayed in the particular format which is followed in